Funny how things change the moment you stop trying. When you were there, giving them attention, they seemed distant, cold, uninterested, maybe even bored. But the second you pull away, the moment you remove yourself from their world, something shifts. Suddenly, they're watching your stories, lingering on your name, revisiting old conversations in their heads. Why? Because the cold shoulder effect is real. Your silence says more than any text, any apology, or any desperate attempt to hold on. When you were available, they didn't see your worth, but now that you've disappeared, they feel the absence. And that absence, it's powerful. It gnaws at them. It whispers reminders of what they lost. Today, we're diving into the psychology behind this shift. Why walking away changes the power dynamic, why emotional distance triggers desire, and why they just can't seem to let you go, even when they swore they were done. People don't chase what they already have. That's human nature. The moment something becomes scarce, it suddenly feels more valuable. It's the same reason luxury brands limit their products, why tickets to an event sell out faster when there are only a few left. Now apply that to relationships. When you were available, they had an unlimited supply of you. Your time, your energy, your affection. Just like an overplayed song, it lost its meaning. But the second you remove that access, they realize what they took for granted. That's when curiosity kicks in, then nostalgia, then regret. Attraction isn't just about presence. It's also about absence. A person's mind fills the silence with thoughts, questions, and, most importantly, emotions. They start wondering, why aren't you reaching out? Are you talking to someone else? Did they ever really know you? Doubt creeps in. And doubt is dangerous. It creates a psychological itch that they feel the need to scratch. The moment you pull away, you become an unfinished story in their mind, and unfinished stories haunt people. This isn't manipulation, it's reality. The truth is, sometimes the best way to be noticed is to stop seeking attention. Think about a game of tug-of-war. If you keep pulling, the other person resists. But what happens when you let go? They stumble forward, caught off guard by the sudden lack of tension. That's exactly what happens when you stop chasing. The power they once had, the comfort of knowing you'd always be there, is gone. They start feeling that imbalance, that loss of control. They thought they had all the power, but now they're the ones wondering, waiting, overanalyzing. They might not admit it. They might even act like they don't care. But deep down, your absence has left a mark. It's in the way they linger on your profile, the way they bring up your name in casual conversations, the way they replay old memories when no one's watching. Because when something ends with certainty, it's easy to move on. But when something ends with mystery, with open-ended questions, it lingers. And nothing haunts a person more than what could have been. Now here's the real question. If walking away makes them realize your worth, why did it take your absence for them to see it? Why couldn't they appreciate you when you were there? And more importantly, do you even want them back? Drop a comment below with "I am worthy" to remind yourself of your value. You don't need to beg, chase, or prove anything to anyone. If you found this video powerful, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Your time is valuable. Never waste it on someone who only realizes your worth when you're gone. Number 1, unshakable. When you stop reacting, they start thinking. Most people, when ignored or rejected, let their emotions take over. They lash out, beg for closure, try to force a conversation, anything to fill the silence. But what they don't realize is that every desperate reaction only pushes the other person further away. The more someone pleads, the more certain the other person becomes that walking away was the right decision. Now picture the opposite, someone who doesn't react, someone who remains composed, unfazed, as if nothing has changed. No chasing, no pleading, no desperate attempts to be seen. Just silence. And this is where something powerful happens. Absence becomes louder than words. The lack of reaction creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. The mind seeks to fill empty spaces, and suddenly, instead of focusing on why they left, they start wondering why there was no chase. They expected a reaction. They assumed they had control over emotions. But when they see indifference instead of desperation, something shifts. A new question enters their mind. Did I misjudge them? There's a strange pull in unpredictability. People are drawn to what they can't fully understand. And when someone who once gave attention so freely suddenly stops, it sparks an itch that wasn't there before. The mind starts replaying old moments, searching for signs, second-guessing decisions. It's not about missing the person, it's about missing the feeling of being wanted. It's like a gambler at a slot machine, used to pulling the lever and seeing a result. The moment the machine stops responding, frustration kicks in. They pull again, harder this time, wondering if the game has changed. And that's exactly what happens when you stop reacting. They turn back, expecting to see you still standing there, waiting, hoping, but instead they see someone who has moved forward, someone unbothered, content in their own presence. That's when the pull begins, because nothing is more powerful than someone who doesn't need to prove their worth, someone who simply knows it. Self-control is strength, thought is mastery, calmness is power. As James Allen said, most people never realize how much control they have until they refuse to give it away. Uncertainty lights the spark. When people sense you're always there, giving endless attention and reassurance, they have no reason to wonder about you. It's human nature. Once someone believes they fully know what to expect, the mystery fades. Ironically, certainty is one of the biggest killers of attraction. The moment they're not sure what's on your mind, when they don't know if you're still as invested as before, something in them starts to stir. That uncertainty triggers intrigue, prompting them to replay past moments in their heads, scrutinize their own decisions, and question whether they truly want to let you slip away. Imagine what happens when you pull away from someone who has grown comfortable with your presence. Your validation, once taken for granted, becomes noticeably absent. They suddenly remember all the messages, calls, and moments of warmth you offered and start asking themselves, why the change? Did something happen? Is there someone else? In that space of not knowing, curiosity takes hold. Much like a reader unable to finish a book's final chapter, they're left wanting more. Uncertainty is powerful because it compels the mind to fill gaps. Think of it like an unfinished puzzle on a table. You can't resist trying to find the missing pieces. In the same way, when you break your pattern and no longer offer the same predictable attention, they feel compelled to figure out why. They might not even realize it's happening, but a part of them starts to obsess over your motivations and emotions. This shift can be startling. The person who once believed they could simply move on with ease now finds themselves stuck in a loop of wonder. The same person they thought they'd outgrown or taken for granted becomes a mystery, a compelling story with an abrupt ending. People often don't realize how attached they are to familiarity until that comfort is gone. Consider how a Stoic individual handles this dynamic. They live with purpose and direction. never making themselves predictable just to soothe someone else's worries. Their mystery isn't an act of manipulation. It's a natural byproduct of having a life that extends beyond any single relationship. Their happiness doesn't hinge on whether another person chooses to stay. Their sense of self-worth isn't defined by attention or approval. Picture someone standing in front of a grand oak tree. If they're focused solely on one branch, they miss the vastness of the entire forest. In relationships, if you're fixated on seeking validation from one source, you miss the broader landscape of your own life, your goals, your dreams, your personal growth. A Stoic mindset reminds you to take a step back and see the whole picture. The people who are chased the most aren't usually those who chase back. Instead, they're the ones who maintain a certain distance, a sense of self-contained calm that says, "I'm complete whether you're here or not." It's not about playing games. It's about truly believing that your life is rich in meaning, regardless of who chooses to walk alongside you. In many cases, this shift from over-availability to quiet self-focus sparks a reaction you might not expect. The one who pulled away or seemed distant begins to reflect on what they've lost. They recall the highlights, the supportive words, the shared laughter, the comforting presence. In this reflection, your value is amplified. It's a paradox. The less you push for their attention, the more they begin to crave yours. There's a timeless piece of wisdom from Marcus Aurelius. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If your thoughts revolve around whether they miss you or whether you can entice them back, you hand over your internal power. You become a passenger in your own story, waiting for external validation to dictate your self-worth. However, if your thoughts remain anchored in your own pursuits, your goals, your passions, your growth, then you create an environment where others must make the effort if they want your time. It's not about being heartless or shutting people out. It's about recognizing that you have a purpose that transcends any single relationship dynamic. When you adopt this perspective, you stop offering constant reassurance or seeking approval. Attraction thrives on a delicate balance of presence and mystery. Give too much, and there's no reason for anyone to miss you. Step away entirely, and there may be no bridge to reconnect. Yet, the sweet spot often lies in carrying on with your life in a self-assured manner, neither chasing nor retreating out of spite. People sense when you stand firm in your own power, and that subtle confidence tends to pique their interest far more than any form of desperation could. When the cold shoulder effect takes hold, it's rarely about game playing. It's the natural outcome of returning to a state of authenticity. You no longer feel compelled to chase someone who doesn't reciprocate. You reclaim the energy you might have poured into proving yourself, redirecting it toward living a meaningful life. Ironically, that authenticity creates a pull stronger than any strategic tactic ever could. In this space of uncertainty, they question everything. Could they have misjudged you? Created a life you Did they overlook something irreplaceable? They start second-guessing whether the distance they once desired is still what they truly want. That internal conflict often stirs up unexpected emotions. Longing, regret, curiosity, all because you chose not to remain a constant, predictable force in their life. Uncertainty lights the spark, and once it's lit, it's incredibly difficult to extinguish. The very absence of certainty calls the other person back to the drawing board, urging them to reassess their choices and the place you hold in their world. That pull, that magnetic force of not knowing, can be far more compelling than any words of reassurance ever spoken. Number 3. The echo of memories. Time has a strange way of rewriting the past. When you step back, when you give them the cold shoulder, something fascinating happens. Their own mind starts working against them. The little things that once annoyed them, the small arguments, the frustrations, all begin to blur. In their place, what remains are the highlights, the moments that made them feel alive, the times when they felt truly seen and valued. This is why people romanticize the past, even when it wasn't perfect. The mind, in its selective memory, has a way of softening the rough edges of conflict, while sharpening the warmth of connection. It's why an old song can bring back an entire era of emotions. Why a familiar scent can transport someone back to a moment they thought they had forgotten. Nostalgia isn't just a feeling, it's a psychological trigger, one that pulls harder when something is no longer accessible. And so, they start to remember the laughter, the comfort, the way your presence made them feel secure. Even if they never admitted it at the time, they don't replay the minor annoyances. They replay the moments where everything felt right. And as much as they try to convince themselves they've moved on, there's an emptiness now. A silence where your voice used to be. It's in this silence that doubt begins to creep in. Was I too hasty? Did I misjudge their worth? Why do I miss them now when I was so sure before? This is where the cold shoulder effect does its real work. Not through words, not through arguments, but through absence. Your withdrawal creates space, not just physical, but psychological. And in that space, they start to realize just how much you meant to them, how much they still feel, even if they won't say it out loud. But here's where the difference lies. While they are caught in nostalgia, you remain steady. You don't chase ghosts of the past or dwell on what was. A Stoic mindset reminds you that memories are echoes. They hold no real power unless you allow them to. You don't need to remind them of your value. Their own mind will do that for you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." While they struggle with lingering emotions, you remain unmoved, focused on the present, on the path ahead. Because the truth is, your worth was never defined by their validation in the first place. For they now see your worth. Imagine being allowed to eat your favorite meal every single day with no restrictions. It might sound appealing at first, but how long would it really take before you start losing your appetite for it? This idea reveals a simple yet powerful principle about how attraction works. What is abundant is rarely valued for long. The same concept applies when someone takes your presence for granted, assuming you'll always be around. They may not think twice about your worth as long as you're readily available, offering time, attention, and energy without hesitation. Then something shifts, you pull away, you introduce scarcity where there was once abundance. Suddenly, the predictable comfort of your constant presence vanishes. In that emptiness, a sense of uncertainty takes over. Your silence becomes louder than any words you've ever spoken, and it resonates in their mind. For possibly the first time, they're confronted with the realization that you might not always be there. And in that vacuum of your absence, they start to see what they previously overlooked, your genuine value. At this point, it's not about mind games or trying to manipulate emotions. It's about embracing a fundamental truth of human nature. People often only start to deeply appreciate what they believe they could lose. those when you were always around. They never had to question life without you. It simply wasn't a possibility in their mind. But now that possibility looms, and it makes them reevaluate everything they once took for granted. Seneca once observed, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Think of that in terms of relationships. When you crave someone's constant approval or validation, you end up devaluing yourself in the process. The moment you decide to step back, stop overextending, stop seeking permission to be worthy, you reveal a version of yourself that isn't so easy to label or overlook. This is when the shift happens. They begin to crave what was once theirs without restriction. The dynamic flips because the abundance of your attention has dried up, replaced by the mild shock of not knowing where you stand. People yearn for what they can't so easily possess, and your sudden withdrawal creates that exact scenario. But this isn't about toying with anyone's emotions. It's about allowing them to see you without the noise of endless availability. Your rarity becomes evident. Humans have a curious tendency to overlook what's in plain sight. Think of a city dweller who has a magnificent view of the skyline from their apartment. After a while, they hardly notice it. But when they move away, or even travel for a few weeks, they come back and see the skyline with fresh eyes. Only in its temporary absence do they remember how striking it really is. Likewise, when someone no longer has you at their beck and call, they experience a version of that rediscovery. At first, it can be disorienting for them. Why isn't there a message? Why aren't they trying to check in or fix things? Did they lose interest? Those questions swirl around, forming doubts and stirring curiosity. Perhaps they misjudged who you really are. Perhaps you aren't as easily defined or controlled as they assumed. That uncertainty becomes a powerful force, often stronger than any direct confrontation you could have staged. There's a reason the more you chase, the less valuable you appear. Desperation signals a willingness to sacrifice self-respect for external validation, suggesting that your sense of worth hinges on their acceptance. When you stop chasing, truly stop, not as a tactic but as a genuine shift in perspective, they're left to confront the idea that your life does not revolve around their approval. And that can be a jarring revelation. Stoic philosophy encourages individuals to remain unmoved by fleeting emotions, firmly grounded in self-respect. This mindset means you're not turning your back on people out of bitterness or spite, but rather recognizing that your value isn't determined by whether someone chooses to stay or go. Rise abundance tours and tall. 4. In the quiet confidence of knowing your own worth, you become less predictable, less malleable. You exist in your own space, answerable to no one's whims. As this transformation occurs, they may find themselves wondering if they let go of something irreplaceable. Now the sense of loss is on their side, and it speaks volumes. What used to be so ordinary suddenly feels special because they can't just snap their fingers and have you at attention. They might recall memories, shared laughter, thoughtful gestures, emotional support, and realize it was never guaranteed to last. How often do we take things for granted until they're gone? That question lingers, reshaping how people see not only relationships, but also their own behaviors and assumptions. Sometimes a brief absence is all it takes to shatter the illusion of permanence. If one looks at the bigger picture, it's clear that this shift in perspective isn't meant to create hostility or foster manipulative tactics. Rather, it's an invitation to foster mutual respect When you know your own worth, you won't need to prove it through dramatic confrontations or endless explanations. The quiet ripple of your absence can make that point far more convincingly. The power of your worth lies in not needing external permission to exist confidently in your own life. Thou har, for du når, finds you nekivi. That self-contained assurance is what they start to see when you pull away. It's what turns a once predictable situation into a complex puzzle they can't quite solve, reawakening their sense of value in you. And in turn, it reawakens your sense of value in yourself, allowing you to step forward with clarity and purpose, whether they decide to re-enter your world or not. Number 5. The game of wanting you back. People are competitive by nature. The moment they feel they're losing someone's attention, an instinct kicks in, a deep, almost primal desire to regain it. This is the essence of the cold shoulder effect. Your silence, your absence, it isn't just noticed, it's felt. And for someone who once held a place in your life, that shift can be unsettling. They start to wonder, did I misjudge them? Are they really moving on? Why aren't they chasing me? That uncertainty stirs something deep within. It's no longer just about missing you. It's about proving to themselves that they still have influence, that they haven't lost their grip. The ego, no matter how subtle, doesn't take rejection lightly, even if they were the ones to walk away first. The realization that you didn't chase creates an unexpected imbalance. But here's the difference. A person grounded in self-respect doesn't react. They don't break their silence just because someone resurfaces. They don't rush to provide reassurance or feed another's need for validation. They do desire. They re-say that this is food. For both, instead they observe. They understand. They remain centered. Real strength comes from self-control, not from chasing someone who once overlooked them. Your silence becomes a mirror. It forces them to confront their own emotions, their own doubt. At first, they may send subtle signals, liking your posts, commenting on things they previously ignored, or sending a casual, "Hey, hope you're doing well." These aren't random actions. They're calculated moves, small tests to see if they still hold a place in your world. Some take it even further, pretending they don't care at all, acting like moving on was effortless, as if they never looked back. But look closely. Notice how they linger in your space, how they check your stories, how they suddenly show interest in things they once dismissed. That's the paradox of the cold shoulder effect. The less you seek their attention, the more they find themselves drawn in. This isn't about manipulation, it's about energy. A person who is fully content within themselves, who isn't desperate for external approval, naturally radiates something rare, an aura of independence, of quiet confidence. And confidence, especially when paired with indifference, is magnetic. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's what separates those who are constantly chasing validation from those who stand firm in their own worth. The moment you stop reacting, stop proving, stop chasing, that's when they start to feel the weight of what they may have lost. So, what do? Nothing. You stay grounded. You focus on your own growth, your own journey. And if they come back, you don't respond with desperation or resentment. 5. You remain indifferent, just as a Stoic would, because in the end, someone who truly values themselves never has to convince anyone to stay. They either recognize your worth or they don't. Either way, you remain unmoved. Number 6. The weight of their own decision. There's a strange irony in human nature. People struggle with decisions they've already made. Even when someone chooses to walk away, that choice doesn't always bring them the peace they expected. Instead, the absence of your pursuit creates a mental tug-of-war, a lingering discomfort they didn't anticipate. When someone rejects you, they assume you'll react. That's the script they're used to. One last plea, a desperate attempt to be heard, a fight to prove your worth. They expect resistance, a pushback that feeds their sense of control. They assume that their decision will keep you orbiting around them, waiting, watching, hoping for another chance. But when you break that pattern, when you don't chase, don't seek closure, don't try to change their mind, you disrupt the rhythm they expected. Suddenly they're staring into a void, and that void becomes their problem, not yours. Now they're left wondering, did I make the right choice? They may have expected relief, a sense of certainty after cutting ties. But instead, there's something else. A creeping doubt, a quiet discomfort that lingers in the spaces where your attention used to be. That's the power of absence. When you remove yourself completely, without bitterness, without a need to prove anything, you create a vacuum they weren't prepared for. They thought they had all the power in the situation, but real power lies in detachment. The moment they realize you're truly gone, that you're not fighting for their approval, they start to feel the weight of their own decision. A Stoic mindset doesn't interfere with another's choices. It lets them live with the consequences of their actions. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You always have the option of having no opinion." Think about that. You don't have to react. You don't have to engage in their confusion. You don't have to explain yourself. And that silence, that absence, speaks louder than any argument or plea ever could. Now picture this. They see you carrying on with your life, unaffected, no bitter posts, no late-night messages, no desperate attempts to reignite the past. Just quiet confidence. That's when the real shift happens. At first, they might test the waters, liking an old post, sending a casual, "How have you been?" But here's where the real power is. You don't need to react. The cold shoulder isn't about cruelty, it's about standing firm in your self-respect. The more you hold your ground, the more the paradox of choice works against them. The decision they once made with certainty now feels shaky. They can't fully let go. Not because you force them to stay, but because your unwavering composure makes them question why they walked away in the first place. "I'm nicest to these, the more though, for the harvest is..." When you remove yourself from the equation, you're not just walking away. You're letting reality do the talking. They expect a reaction, a plea, a last attempt to hold on. But when none of that comes, the weight of their own decision settles in ways they never anticipated. Real power isn't in chasing, convincing, or explaining. Real power is in detachment. Number 7, thriving without them. This is the ultimate shift. The greatest power move isn't revenge. It isn't begging for another chance. It's becoming better without them. If they expected you to break down, to sulk, to fall apart in their absence, nothing will shake them more than seeing you rise. Instead, this is the essence of the cold shoulder effect. Not anger, not games, just undeniable progress. This is why people check up on those they've left behind. It's not just curiosity. It's the need to confirm that their absence mattered. When they see you thriving, hitting the gym, building something meaningful, sharpening your mind, it doesn't just intrigue them, it unsettles them. They expected you to chase, to plead, to validate their importance. But instead they find themselves questioning, was I ever truly essential to their life? Did I push them toward growth, or was I the one holding them back? People move on easily when they believe they left an undeniable mark. But when the one they walked away from grows in ways they never predicted, when their silence speaks louder than their presence ever did, doubt creeps in. The thought lingers, did I leave someone who was about to become extraordinary? That's when the shift happens. The cold shoulder isn't about arrogance or cruelty. It's about indifference rooted in self-respect. When you detach and focus entirely on your own evolution, you project a quiet confidence that no amount of chasing could ever achieve. This kind of growth is magnetic, not because it seeks attention, but because it exists without needing it. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." A person of discipline doesn't grow to prove a point. They grow because self-improvement is their nature. They are not swayed by fleeting emotions, nor do they seek validation from those who have already walked away. They are anchored in their own purpose. So while someone may have left, thinking they had the upper hand, your silence and your relentless self-betterment become a mirror reflecting their own choices. And in that reflection, something uncomfortable stirs. They won't just be surprised, they'll be regretful. Because nothing haunts a person more than knowing they once had access to something rare and let it slip away. Number 8. Still watching, still wondering. They may never admit it, but trust me, they're watching. Maybe they told you they were moving on. Maybe they even posted pictures with friends, smiling, laughing, making it look like life is better without you. But the truth, they're still keeping tabs. The cold shoulder effect is real. When someone acts distant, when they ignore you, when they give you nothing but silence, it's not always indifference. Sometimes it's a calculated move, a way to make you feel their absence. But even as they play that game, they can't help but peek from behind the curtain. Social media makes it easier than ever. They don't have to ask around. They don't have to reach out. All they have to do is scroll. They're checking to see if you've changed, if you've moved on, if your energy is different. They're searching for signs, anything that proves they left a mark on your life. And if they find nothing but someone who keeps moving forward, unshaken, that's when the cold shoulder starts to melt. Because nothing is more unsettling than realizing they're losing their grip on your mind. Why do people do this? Because humans crave validation. Even when they claim they don't care, they want to know they matter. They want to believe they left an impact. They want reassurance that they had power over you. It's not about love, it's about ego. But when they see you standing firm, unshaken, when they realize you're not stuck in the past waiting for their return, something shifts. The absence of your reaction becomes the most powerful response you could ever give. And this is where Stoicism becomes your advantage. A true Stoic doesn't seek validation from the outside world. They don't post to prove a point. They don't manipulate perception to appear stronger than they are. They simply are. They move forward with discipline, not desperation. They build themselves up not to impress others, but because growth is in their nature. That quiet strength, it's magnetic. While they watch from the shadows, you continue forward, unbothered, unaffected, untouchable. And that's what keeps them hooked. Because the most intriguing person isn't the one trying to be seen. It's the one so focused on their own path that they don't even notice who's watching. Number 9. The game of distance and control. At some point, when the silence becomes too much, they will test you. Not necessarily because they want to come back, but because they want to see if they still have influence over you. They created the distance, maybe even rejected you. But now, the absence of your attention starts to gnaw at them. They expected you to linger, to orbit their world like a satellite that never drifts too far. But instead, you did something rare, something most people fail to do. You disappeared. A person doesn't just forget someone who values themselves. Your absence creates a void, and that void is uncomfortable. Not because they necessarily want you back, but because they want to know that they could have you if they wanted to. That's the crucial distinction. So they start poking at that void. Maybe they send a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" A message so simple yet loaded with unspoken intent. Maybe they like an old photo out of nowhere just to see if you'll react. Maybe they post a cryptic message about missing the old times, or a song lyric conveniently tied to your past together, knowing full well that you'll see it. And here's where most people fail. They take the bait. They assume this is a green light, proof that regret has finally kicked in. That maybe, just maybe, this is the moment of realization, the moment they come running back. So they respond with enthusiasm, undoing all the power they built through silence. They convince themselves they must regret losing them. But the truth is far less romantic. They aren't making a grand gesture of reconciliation. They're just checking if they still have you in their pocket, if they can still pull you back in whenever they feel like it. Think about a cat, ignore it, and suddenly it's rubbing against your leg, demanding attention. But the moment you reach out too eagerly, it loses interest and walks away. That's what's happening here. It's not about wanting you. It's about wanting to know they could have you if they wanted to. And here's the key lesson. If they truly wanted to return, they wouldn't be playing mind games. They wouldn't be dropping breadcrumbs. They would show up with the full meal. Their test is not an invitation. It's a probe, a way to see if they still have an emotional grip on you. Marcus Aurelius said it best, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." A person of integrity doesn't fall for empty gestures. They recognize when something isn't sincere and respond with wisdom, not impulse. They understand that their self-respect is not a toy to be played with, or a prize to be claimed whenever someone feels nostalgic. So when they reach out with something vague, your response should be just as indifferent. A brief, polite acknowledgement, if anything at all. No chasing, no over-explaining, no eager engagement. Just the same cold shoulder they once gave you. Why? Because a person who values themselves does not reward inconsistency. They must earn their way back, not simply waltz in because they suddenly feel an emptiness that only your attention can fill. But here's the real test. It isn't theirs, it's yours. Will you hold your ground? Will you maintain your self-respect and continue forward? Or will you prove that all they have to do is snap their fingers to get your attention? This moment measures your strength. Not in words, not in longing, but in the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth. Someone who refuses to be a fallback option. Number 10. When they can't let go, but you should. Here's the truth. They may never fully let go, but that's not your concern. Too many people trap themselves in a cycle of wondering, do they still think about me? Do they regret their decision? Will they reach out one day? That kind of thinking is a prison of your own making, an invisible chain keeping you emotionally bound to someone who is no longer present. You think you're analyzing their behavior, but really, you're just feeding your own attachment, keeping yourself locked in a past that no longer serves you. Ustastativistatatekuzis. Tu. Here's it than you. And here's the paradox of the cold shoulder effect. The more distant and indifferent you become, the harder it is for them to truly let go. That's why they keep checking your social media, why they find ways to linger in your world, why they play the game of hot and cold. It's not about love, it's about control. When they walked away, they expected you to chase, to break, to validate their importance in your life. But when you didn't, it unsettled them. The moment you stopped feeding their ego, they felt an unexpected void. Your silence speaks louder than words, and now they're left wondering why they no longer hold the same grip over you. This is where your power lies. You don't need them to let go, you only need yourself to. A Stoic understands that true strength comes not from forcing an outcome, but from accepting reality as it is. You can't control their feelings, their regrets, or their nostalgia. You can't control whether they come back, linger, or disappear for good. What you can control is your response. When their passive-aggressive silence no longer affects you, when their attempts to re-enter your life no longer shake your foundation, that's when you've won. Not over them, but over yourself. Because the real lesson of the cold shoulder effect isn't about making them miss you. It's about realizing you don't need them to. Look at history's greatest Stoics. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. They all preach the same fundamental truth. Attachments rooted in neediness make you weak. A person who finds peace within themselves is untouchable. And that's what this moment is offering you. Not just a way to win them back, but a path to something far greater. Self-mastery. If they ever come back, you won't even have to decide. Because by the time they realize your value, you'll have already moved on. And that is the ultimate victory. True power isn't in making them miss you. It's in reaching a place where it no longer matters if they do. The cold shoulder effect works because it shifts the dynamic, forcing them to reconsider your worth. But the real lesson here isn't about playing games or manipulating emotions. It's about understanding your own value and refusing to let anyone else define it. When you detach from the need for validation, you step into the mindset of a Stoic. Someone who controls their emotions, who remains centered no matter what happens around them. If they come back, it's not because you chased. It's because you became the kind of person worth chasing. And if they don't, you've already won. Because your growth, your confidence, and your purpose were never dependent on their presence. Now, if you're ready to step into this mindset fully, take action. Stop waiting, stop overanalyzing. Focus on your own path. Keep building, keep growing, and watch how everything else falls into place. Your power lies in knowing that you don't need anyone to complete you. You were always whole to begin with.